Hello, everyone, and welcome to my live reading of Mr. Silly by Robert Hargreaves. It's a very important book in modern day society, especially nowadays, with too much seriosity in our society. We live in so Mr. Silly lives in Nonsense Land, which is a very funny place to live. You see, in Nonsense Land, everything is silly as can be. And in Nonsense Land, the trees are pink and the grass is blue. Isn't that silly? And there's a nice little picture. Next page. In Nonsense Land, dogs wear hats. And do you know how birds fly in Nonsense Land? Well, they don't fly forwards. They fly backwards. It is a really very silly place indeed, which of course is why Mr. Silly lives here. That's a dog. Oh, that's a dog with a hat, right? That's not Mr. Silly. It's Mr. Silly is the guy on the front. Mr. Silly, in fact, this guy, he lives in quite the silliest. For a moment I thought I said it's not that much of a silly house, but no, it is quite the silliest looking house you've ever seen in your whole life. Have you seen a sillier house than that? Have you?
I don't know how it can
How does that? It's like the Leaning Tower of Pisa, except very silly. Now, this particular story is all about the Nonsense Cup. You see, in Nonsense Land, each year they hold a competition, and the cup is a what? I've just thought, how do they know what silliness is? Because it can only be relative to being serious, right?
Yeah, that's like the. Well, but if it's just like culture, that's like.
Well, maybe if it's Nonsense Land, it's not like it's Nonsense Universe. Maybe there's a neighbouring town called Seriousville or something. And so, you see, in Nonsense Land each year they hold a competition, and the cup is awarded to whoever has the silliest idea of the year. Mr. Silly, they must have something relative. They have to. Mr. Silly had never won the cup. Mr. Silly, of all people, have never won the cup. But each night, lying in his bed, he dreamed about winning it. I'm actually so intrigued to fucking know what happens next, right?
What the ending is? The ending's gonna fuck you up as well.
Is it? Yeah.
Fuck you up based on what I remember. Yeah.
Oh shit, yeah.
I don't want to give too much away.
So in order to win the Nonsense Cup, Mr. Silly realised that he would have to think up something remarkably silly. So he pondered over the problem one morning at breakfast. A little bit of silly breakfast. Incidentally, they didn't write that, but they should have. You may be interested to know what Mr. Silly was having for breakfast. He was having a cup of coffee, which he put a spoonful of marmalade in. A bit like on Nathan Barley when he's like, yeah, I'll have some scrambled egg and some smoked salmon in that coffee. And he goes like, oh, it's good. And he's just like, no, it's not good. I won that. I won. And he's like, no, it's good. Yeah.
Not within the coffee, like literally in the coffee. That doesn't sound that crazy though. Like that sounds, like marmalade and cereal.
Yeah, no, marmalade and a coffee sounds fine. Orange,
Yeah.
Well, after that, he had a cornflake sandwich. This is quite tame. People have like crisp sandwiches. Well, to finish it off, he had a boiled egg. But being Mr. Silly, he ate the shell as well, like foxes do.
It's got a lot of zinc, man.
It's calcium as well, isn't it? Yeah.
And calcium.
Yeah, mad stuff.
It looks so good.
Isn't that a silly breakfast? Well,
not really.
Not really.
Yeah.
Come on, Mr. Silly.
Oh wait, maybe we're British. Maybe that's what's going on. Yeah.
Isn't Robert Hargreaves British? Roger Hargreaves.
I don't know, man. But maybe I don't know. Maybe he is.
Who knows? Oh wait, I found it. He's mixed sauces.
Oh. He was English. He was English.
I thought it because it's so popular in England. Anyway, this particular breakfast time, Mr. Silly was thinking about how to win that cup, and he remembered 2 years ago that the cup was won by Mr. Ridiculous. Whoo! He won by wallpapering his house. Fuck me. Which sounded very ordinary, but in fact, he wallpapered the outside of his house. Oh, right, no, that's how I read it, actually. I'm conditioned by silliness, aren't I? Because when I read this phrase, he won by wallpapering his house, I guess it's because I saw the picture first. But it says like, oh, that sounds normal. You wallpaper the inside of your house. But I was like, but I didn't even think about that. I did think about the outside. So anyway, but that, like I said, probably because I saw the picture first. Is this still filming? Is this thing on? It's still filming. We're about 4 minutes. We're 5 minutes in. Who the fuck's gonna watch the rest of this?
This book came out in 1972.
72. Fucking hell. Not like 90s.
No.
Mate, 72. That's like when Alan Watts died. 75, wasn't it?
He never got to read Mr. Spec.
He never got to read.
He might have done. He got a year.
He probably read a
Spec.
couple and thought, haha. I don't know whatever he says. So Mr. Silly, oh god, this car is fucked. So Mr. Silly remembered last year when Mr. Foolish won the cup. Mr. Foolish was a friend of Mr. Silly's, had won the cup by inventing a car. It was quite a normal car, apart from one thing. It had square wheels. Isn't that silly?
This sounds like a very...
It's beyond silly, it's fucking impractical.
It sounds like a very...
Sorry, I couldn't get to work. My silly car wouldn't drive me.
It sounds like a very weird society. Like, it's a sort of part, is it like...
No, it's a counterculture of like serious society, isn't it?
Oh Jesus, they're like existentialists.
They're existentialists.
Yeah.
So Mr. Silly thought...
Mr. Sartre.
Yeah. It's funny because that's actually his name. Mr. Silly thought and thought and thought, but it was no good. He even had another cup of coffee with marmalade, but that didn't help either. So he decided to take a walk, and off he went, leaving his front door open, so that... What?
Oh, I have a weird memory of this. Go on. So that he
Off he went, leaving his front door open, so that he wouldn't have burglars when he was out. Is that so they can get back out?
Yeah.
Because if he gets in, they're trapped. Oh, I've got burglars again.
Yeah.
That is silly. On his walk, Mr. Silly met a chicken wearing Wellington boots, carrying an umbrella.
This is the worst story. This is such a bad... He's just finding excuses to like just... Oh, I can think of 5 silly things, and I'm just going to make a crap story over it.
I'm going to have to read something else next instead of the Roger Hargreaves.
Yeah, like just go like...
Mr. Grumpy sounds like that'd be like real. Like real shit. Well, wouldn't it be silly if you didn't wear Wellington boots and carry an umbrella? He said to the... He's asking... He's leveling up here. He's saying, wouldn't it be silly if you didn't wear those Wellington boots and carry an umbrella? Because it's so normal now for the chicken to do that. You know? So meow, said the chicken. Because animals in nonsense land don't make the same noise as they do in your country. On his walk, Mr. Silly met a worm wearing a top hat, monocle, and an old school tie. I'm sure, yes, a bit of... Yeah. Wouldn't it be silly if you didn't wear a top hat and a monocle and old school tie, said the worm, and quack, quack, said the worm. Ooh, next, Mr. Silly met a pig wearing trousers and a bowler hat. Wouldn't it be silly if you didn't wear trousers and a bowler hat, asked the pig. Moo, said the pig. Now that's not that weird because they're both farmyard animals. So they probably like... I wouldn't doubt some pigs can speak cow and vice versa, because some of them live... Well, they probably don't live together, do they? They live in cages.
It's regional dialect, isn't it?
Regional dialect, exactly, mate. So, he's got some paint. It was the middle of Mr. Silly's walk that he had his idea. It was his beautifully silly idea. Quite the silliest idea he's ever had. Hurried into town, bought himself a pot of paint and a paintbrush, and he got to work. He got to fucking work. Oh, God, it's King Arthur or something, isn't it? So the day of the great awarding of the Nonsense Cup, we don't even know. Oh, we don't know what it is until we see it firsthand. That's nice. That's some anticipation shit there. So, Nonsense Cup day arrives. A huge crowd assembled in City Square to see who is going to win the cup. The King of Nonsense Land mounted the specially built platform. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot of pages left. Ladies and gentlemen, he said to the crowd in City Square, it's my pleasure today to award the Nonsense Cup to whomever. It should be whomever, shouldn't it? Whoever has had the silliest idea of the year. So one... I thought there was a monkey, but it's just an Irish bloke.
You got a banana.
You're buying a used Johnny, aren't you? You met on the moors. One of the silliest ideas of the year, continued the king, is by Mr. Muddle the farmer. He has managed to grow, of all things, a square apple. It looks like a pipe. It looks like some kind of
That
smoke.
sounds really useful for storage.
Oh, 'cause
square was bad idea.
But square apple,
Square
it doesn't
apples,
fall
you
over and
could-
shit, right?
You can like box them up.
Yeah.
You can suck
Ah,
them in.
nice. So the
Like,
crab.
yeah.
How did he do that? How did he grow a square? How did he?
That just sounds amazing.
He
That
probably
sounds
boxed
silly.
it in. No, because the thing is, when the apple begins growing, like Chinese feet, you know, when the apple is growing, you've just got to like put like a cube box around it. Wait a minute, is this square or cube?
Oh yeah.
It's 2D, so it's square, I guess. Now, do they live in 2D land? Now, this is too much. Okay, let's get on with the story. So, the crowd clapped as the square apple was held up by Mr. Muddle. Oh, muddle means, I guess, like, oh, I'm in a muddle. I'm trying to think what's so silly about that.
He's actually got a book written about him.
Mr. Muddle, really?
Yes, I think that's one.
He doesn't look like Mr. Man, though.
Is that Mr. Muddle?
That's Mr. Muddle, yeah.
Muddle.
No, okay.
I'm chatting absolute nonsense.
Oh, it's Mr. Someone, isn't it? So, yeah. It's Mr. Emotions, though. That's what these characters are. So, if you get too emotional in one particular emotion, like silliness or grumpiness or whatever, you become a manifestation of that. And you look like these fucking
These
things.
are like Carl Jung's archetypes.
Carl Jung's
Like
archetypes.
literally, psychoanalytic theory out the it's all like 60 Mr. Men is what make up the human.
Which Mr. Men archetype philosophically are you ascribed by Carl Jung?
You've got too much silly.
Fucking hell. So, Mr. Muddle, he felt he was sure going to win. However, said the king, and Mr. Muddle's face fell. He had an even sillier idea ended by Mrs. Nincompoop. There's a Mrs. here. Oh my god. It was a teapot. Quite the silliest teapot there'd ever been. The crowd broke into thunderous applause. They burst into treats. I therefore have great pleasure, announced the king, of presenting the nonsense cup too. So you can have the cup and pour the tea into it now, can't you? But here's the tea. Here's the teapot, if in case you know. It's got the spout is like, it's fucked up. It's a bit like a backwards gun. And so just then he looked up and he stopped in astonishment. Now, in the middle of City Square, there is a tree. It's always been there, and it was this tree that the king was looking in astonishment. What, he cried, has happened to that tree? Everybody turned to look. No, the tree had green... It's exactly what I was saying!
Yeah,
the tree had green leaves. Bright green leaves. Not pink leaves like all the trees in Nonsense Land. There was an amazed silence. It was me, piped in Mr. Silly. This is what he was saying to the worm and the fucking chicken and the pig. It was me, piped up Mr. Silly. I painted all the leaves green last night while you were asleep, and there they all are, just fucking in awe. Wow, this is sick. A green tree, exclaimed the king. Who ever heard of a green tree? A green tree, shouted the crowd. How silly, and they started to applaud. Mr. Silly smiled modestly. The king held up his hands. I think, he said, that is the silliest idea I have ever heard of. And therefore I award the fucking nonsense cup to Mr. Silly. The crowd cheered and cheered. Mr. Silly went pink with pride.
It's just so weird because what do they think silly is then? That's
it needs some sort of relativity, innit? I might name the video Yin Yang or something.
That's what the problem, because you're introducing to a world, okay, they understand what silliness is because of the relativity, as you're saying. Yeah. But then in the end they don't. So what do they actually...
If there was a world in which everybody had the same height, are they tall or short?
Right. Exactly.
They're just the same height.
They wouldn't, yeah.
You wouldn't even have the word height.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Because you wouldn't be able to describe, unless you could say like legs and arms are the same length. I don't know. Yeah. Well, a bird.
You wouldn't say you're like that.
Yeah, it's fucked, isn't it? It's very interesting. Yeah. And a bird perched high up on the branches of the silly green tree and looked down. Woof! It said, and flew off backwards.
It just confuses me, man. What does it mean?